This video is on domain and range. We've talked about domain and range in a previous video, so this time we're actually going to be looking at the differences between the domain and range. So the domain is the x values that can be plugged into a relation or a function. Not all relations are functions, but both of them will have a domain. So that is looking at the actual relation or the function, but on a graph, it is how far from the left to right the graph goes. We read from left to right, so domain will also go from left to right. We find the leftmost point and the rightmost point, and then we go from in between them. Now, sometimes there will be arrows, which means that it goes on forever in a direction, and that will also affect the domain and the range. The range, since the domain is the x values, the range is the y values that come out. Since the domain is the input, the range is the output of a relation or a function. Again, not all relations are functions, but they will both have, no matter what, they will both have a domain and a range. So if we're looking at it again on a graph, since it's the y values are on that vertical axis, so it's from the bottom to the top. We want to go from the smallest number to the largest number. So the range on a graph is how far it goes from the bottom to the top the graph goes. So we want to go from the smallest to the largest value. So if we're when we're writing out the domain and range, we will always list the x and y values in order from least to greatest. But we want to make sure that we do not repeat any numbers. Sometimes the domain and range will be a list of every number above 0. We cannot physically write every single number above 0 because that would include 0.1, 0.001, 0.0001, and that is physically impossible to do. So instead of listing out every single number, sometimes we'll need to use inequalities to represent them. So we will have a set notation, but sometimes we will have very specific numbers that represent our domain and range, which we can list out those values.